Let's see where to begin. Parks Cannery was built in 1934. There was a gentleman by the name of, I use this book right here for my information. It works really good. It has a little bit about most of the canneries on Kodiak Island, and it has a blurb in here about Parks Cannery. And it tells about the name of the gentleman that built the place, that had the insight to build the place. And his name was Herbert T. Dominic. And the name of his packing company was Great Northern Packing Company. And Mr. Dominic was a former cannery superintendent from out the bay at Old Uyak. And I don't know what went on there, but anyway, he showed up in 1934 with a boat full of materials and a bunch of workers, and they begin to commence to get a job done. And what they did is, in the first year, they got a 1 pound can line operating. They had that operating by May, and they had a small hydropower set up here for electricity, but they needed a bigger engine to be able to produce the power and run the place. So there was an old sunk boat on the other side of the bay, and they took the engine out of that, repurposed it, and got it fired up and used it in their cannery. And so the first year wasn't very profitable at all, because by the time they get the cannery all set and everything all working and operating, the Teamsters down south were on strike, so they couldn't get their tin to put the salmon in. And finally they were able to get it later in the season, but by then the fish had pretty much come and gone, so that was kind of dismal. And then I think I read somewhere that the second year the fish didn't show up. So anyway, they survived through it, and Dominic owned it until 1940, adding on a little bit each year while he owned it. They put in new fuel docks, a cook shack, and built some quarters for the workers, and just started building the place. But anyway, in 1940, the Parks brothers, headed by James Wilson's Park, and Parks first came to Alaska during the gold rush days, but returned to Aberdeen, Washington, later established, and came to back to Alaska and get into the canned salmon business. So Parks owned it up until, I'm really not sure quite what year, but I know their last canning year was 1982. And then in 1983, the American Can Company came and got all their canning equipment, and that was the end of that. And at that time, I believe they sold it to the Korean company, and the Koreans were going to process king crab. But as we all know, the king crab vanished. So that was the end of that. The Koreans kind of just walked away from the place. And then there was a watchman here for a number of years. And one thing led to another, and the Koreans put it on the market and dumped it. And my business partner, a resident of Kodiak Island, the town of Kodiak, Mr. George Reith, he and another gentleman or a couple other people purchased the place, and they hung on to it for a while and had me as watchman. And then finally I had just about enough of neglecting my own place over there on Amick Island, so talked to them, and they agreed to sell me part of the cannery. So I went to the bank, and here I am today. Spirit of Alaska Wilderness Adventures operated out of here now for 27 years. And no, let me take that back. I operated from the summer of '08. But I've been a resident here out of the cannery since '97.